So above me now we have one of our Transactive Extra hoists. This one's fitted to a H system roughly 5 metres long by 3 metres wide. I'll just grab the hoist for you now. We'll have a quick run through of the features on the hoist itself, which we have on here. This particular one, which we'll be showing a bit later on, has two buttons at the bottom, green and red. These are for the powered, either a powered H system or a powered turntable. In this case we've got a manual H system, but we've put a powered hoist on just to show you the features of the hoist. So obviously up and down is up and down for the hoist. If we press those, the hoist will operate in the up or down direction. The blue and yellow colour coded directional buttons, so yellow will go away from me and blue towards me. You won't be able to see it from here, but underneath here we have a yellow and a blue arrow. The reason we colour code them is because if I face away from you now, the buttons will be the opposite way around. So in this case, yellow is to my right and blue to the left. If I turn to face you guys, the buttons work in the wrong direction. So the colour coding is to make sure you get the correct direction and don't drive somebody into a wardrobe, a wall or any other object. The two at the bottom, as I mentioned before, will be to power the H system. So if this was a powered H system, the red and green would move the H system track towards and away from the camera as we are now. In this case, I'll show you in a little while, there's a powered turntable, so the green and red will turn the turntable clockwise and anti-clockwise. The hoist has an emergency stop and an emergency lower function on there. So if we're operating the hoist in any direction and we pull the red tab, it will switch off all functions of the hoist. If you pull and hold the tab down, you'll hear a small alarm, and that's your emergency lower function should you need to use it. When you let go, the hoist is still in emergency mode and won't operate. So just at the top of the little cable there, push the button back in and the hoist will reactivate and start working as normal again. There is a manual override for raise and lower, so you can raise and lower the hoist when there's absolutely no power, when no handset available. That's your last resort. I'll show you that a bit later on. Underneath the hoist here we have a digital LCD display screen. So when the hoist is being operated, it tells you what is happening with the hoist. So if I press the up function, the display underneath here will tell me that the hoist is going up. Press down, it tells me it's going down. As standard, when it's removed from charge, it actually shows me the battery power. So it's currently telling me that the battery is 100%. Obviously the more I use the hoist, that will deplete and the battery level indicator will show on here and it will tell me what the percentage of the battery is. There is a program mode which we can go into and we can change that to display how many lifts the hoist has done. We can also change the speed in which the hoist drives along the track. Don't get too excited, it doesn't go very fast, but we can slow it right down. If you've got somebody that's very, very nervous about being moved in a hoist, we can make it slower and smoother by changing the settings in there. There's also settings in there for our engineers to check how many hours, minutes, seconds the hoist has been operated for, and when it's next due for servicing and parts, etc. So the hoist itself on the H system, the track itself moves forwards and backwards in this case from the camera. The powered button will move backwards and forwards here. So the benefit with your H system there is it gives you full room coverage. We can literally go from corner to corner of a room. Obviously it has to be in a square or rectangular shaped room. If there's any alcoves that are offset, we can't cover those with a single H system. If you need to go onto a separate track system or from room to room, we use what we call a transition gate, and again that'll be coming up shortly when I show you that. As for the fitting, because we have two parallel tracks and then this track here, this is what we call double or piggyback track. The reason for this double track here is for extra strength. If this H system was slightly narrower, we'd just use single track. As we go wider, we need to strengthen the track so it doesn't bend, and we end up with this double piggyback track shown up here. The only downside to a H system is that you will lose a little bit of lifting height, and depending on the configuration, we can fit this track higher up in between the two parallels, as long as the maximum width is only 2.5 meters. If we go further than that, then unfortunately we do have to lose this little bit of height. So we've probably lost about 2.5 inches in height from the ceiling from a standard track. So I'm going to move on now and show you the transition gate. So by the powers of magic I have moved. I'm now stood at the opposite side of the H system, same hoist, and we have in here what we call a transition gate. So at the end of this track there is a metal rod which, if I just drive the hoist, press yellow, it will hit the end and it cannot fall off. When this track joins and lines up with a second separate piece of track to my right, a gate, transition gate, will open both tracks and allow the hoist to fall off this track onto the next track. It can only happen when both tracks are perfectly aligned. So if I push this hoist forward, join the two tracks together just here, it's perfectly clear and open. So it's opened that gate, which will now allow me to drive the hoist across over that gap onto the new tracking system. That could be going through a doorway into another room, down a corridor. We've fitted H systems over swimming pools, etc., in changing areas, and we can have single tracks going off into boys and girls changing rooms, etc. If I manually move this track now, you'll see that it's dropped on both sides here. You probably can't see inside there, but again, if I try and come back onto the H system, it won't let me because it knows that the track isn't lined up, so it's unsafe. If I manually pop it back together again, the hoist will now drive straight off the individual track back onto the H system and can be operated as so. So it's perfectly safe. The track, although it looks open, has a safety stopper in. So we'll move on again and I'll show you the powered turntable next. Now we've moved on, we're stood underneath the powered turntable. There is a manual option available which has potentially more exits. On the powered turntable you can only have 4 exits. If we add any more than that, it gets too complicated for care staff or family members to use the system because you're having to try and line it up manually using the red and green button down here. So the options you have: the hoist is going to join from your right, my left, join onto the turntable, and the first option is to go straight through the other side, which takes me around the bend at the bottom there. Then we have the option, in this case, of turning left or right, forwards and backwards. We could potentially change these two options, so you always have directly opposite the entrance, but we can have 45-degree angle going across to my right or a 45-degree angle coming backwards to my right. You can only choose 45 degrees or 90 degrees as your second choice. So in this case, as I said before, we have 90 degrees. So if we drive on to the center of the turntable and press, in this case, green, it will turn to the left and I can then drive the hoist back towards me, pressing the blue button, off the turntable, round the bend. We can go back on and we can keep doing the same thing again, so I can drive directly through the turntable again towards the camera, or if we come back again, back to the center, and this time press the red button to turn back to where it was before, then we can drive off in the original direction around the 90-degree bend there. And that will drive again until it hits the end of the track, and that will stop. So if we come all the way back now to the turntable, I'll just show you one last time. So blue will bring the hoist back towards the turntable. Once we arrive, we have the option of going straight through again, or we go back to the turntable to change direction. Once we're in the centre of that turntable, press in this case the green, and we can drive off again in another direction.